Hey, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate your time, and we're doing something a little bit different today with our episode on this week on a very special blossom. Right, there's a lot going on right now in the tech industry, in the economy in general, and I sat down with our marketing team as I do to talk about strategy and topics and what should we do, how do we make these valuable to folks, and I couldn't get it off my mind, sort of everything that's going on around the tech industry and layoffs and economic uncertainty. We sort of landed on this. Yeah, I think we should talk about it, but we should talk about it in a non-gross way, right? Like, how do we do this in the context of being supportive and trying to add some value, add some insight into the world, right? So, what we decided to do is I'll spend some time today walking through some of my experiences and some of my insights, over the last number of years, and try and translate them into some of the ideas that I have for folks today, just around ways to keep growing, to adapt, and to really think about, where things are at and where you go for them. I'm going to use some stories. I'm going to use some examples from my history, like I said, to really kind of give you some things that are actionable, right? Some things that you can do to take and sort of maintain control, perspective, positive attitude, all of those kinds of things in the times today. It's really been a few years since we've faced some things like this, and so been through it a couple of times. Dot-com bubble, the crash in 2008. Now seeing some things. Are we in a recession? Are we not in a recession? And now seeing that reflected with investment, layoffs, different strategies, different actions from some of the largest players in our industry. For me, someone like Microsoft is very much top of mind. Apex is a Microsoft partner, and just how is this affecting our business, but also how is this a precursor to other things that are going to happen in the industry. So I'm going to try and make it kind of funny. I got some interesting episodes in my career that I want to use, like I said, to kind of tie it together to where we're at today. Here's where I am now, right? So life has landed me at Apex. We've been around a long time. Hundreds of customers, hundreds of projects and deployments, dozens of customers under management, whether it's their Microsoft relationship, whether it's managed services. And so it is a cool place to work. That's one of my themes, is really around culture and fit and emotional intelligence and things like that. And the fact that Apex prides itself and really feels like this is a part of what makes us special is part of the reason I've landed here, I think. So, well, let's jump in, and I'll kind of help us think about navigating careers. I think some of you will find some corollaries to some things you've done or went through, some experiences you've had, but also, human beings are uniquely capable of teaching each other things without that direct experience, right? We can learn to not touch the electric cow fence by being told not to do it. Not every single one of us, sadly, I still needed to, has to actually touch the fence and be like, oh yeah, that's a big zap, right? And so human beings have this ability to relate experiences and teach through the experience of others. And so that's a bit of what I'm hoping to do today is like I said, share some funny stories and kind of see where this goes. So just like most high schoolers, first job working at a grocery store, pushing carts. Just for reference, and if any of you want to sort of carbon date me, this was the summer of 1988. And so it was a drought summer, super, super hot, and pushing metal carts from the parking lot in the summer led to good physical fitness, but it was definitely a hard job. When the summer was over, faced with, captain's practice for football, football practice, going back to high school, all of those kinds of things, I sort of figured out, hey, I'm not going to be able to keep working, but just didn't communicate with management, didn't, communicate what I needed, and made a bunch of assumptions. Because it was the summer, I was maybe working 5 days a week, 3, 4 hours a day or something like that, maybe a little bit more. And I knew I couldn't keep doing that. And so I made it sort of this binary decision and sort of just, you know, stop showing up, right? Oh, this won't work. So I guess I'm done. And if I would have talked to leadership, I would have talked to management, right, as it were, in a grocery store, you know what? I probably could have kept the job and kept making some money. So I had some money to spend and put gas in my 1980 Buick Regal. And it was a poor decision based on the fact I wasn't communicating. I wasn't communicating how my life was changing, that I maybe had some asks, and off on my own, I just assumed that they would sort of fall on deaf ears, changing my schedule, reducing my hours, being less available, all of those kinds of things. I just assumed it wouldn't work and it would sort of fall on deaf ears. And really regret that, right? Sort of to this day, I look back on that and just I'm like, that was really quite an unfortunate decision. But I was 16, cut me some slack. And so I think the tie-in here is, communicating your changing priorities, especially coming off of COVID and the dramatic shift to remote work. Some different companies have put edicts out there or made sort of broad sweeping statements. And I'll talk about that a little bit more here in a bit. But that doesn't mean that they're not open to working with employees, and especially good employees, right? If you're delivering value to the organization, it's worth a conversation, right? If some of you are in sales, it's the, worst thing they can say is no. And so to this day, I sort of regret not communicating. I think that's one of the ways I've grown. I think it's one of those strategies that you really need to think about these days. Michael and I had fun tracking down some of the logos and screenshots that you'll see in the background. Some of you know I live in Minnesota, and so it sort of feels like there's a state law that at some point every Minnesotan has to work for Target. I spent almost 10 years at Target, starting in a store and ending up working at headquarters downtown here in Minneapolis, and really getting my first job in IT and growing up through the ranks, really starting as a very low wage hourly employee in a store in high school, working through college, going more full-time, college part-time to finish, really coming up through the ranks. The challenge was, the compensation, right? I was seeing people coming into groups, getting paid more than me. I never said anything about it. I just sort of stewed about it. And this goes back to the communication thing, right? I think I should have asked and communicated, kind of what I was thinking to my manager much, much earlier. So eventually it led me to sort of job search, right? Hey, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of us hiring, the guy from IBM, and he comes in making 20% more than me. Employees talk, managers, they always talk about this stuff, no matter what you tell them not to do. And so I started looking externally and started chasing money. Found a job that paid a lot more in a really wonky situation. It's a company that's gone now. It's called Fingerhut. You sort of bought things on layaway, but they were willing to pay me a lot more for a similar kind of role. And so I took the job. I signed my offer letter and dropped it in the mail at our headquarters building at Target, and finally went in and had that conversation with my manager. Said, "Hey, I'm going to leave. I've got a better offer somewhere else." And he's like, "Well, what's the offer?" And I not only said that number, I said more. And he's like, "Well, I can try to go get that for you." And within the course of the afternoon, he had gotten it for me, right? I had never asked. We can all say, it's kind of crappy that the organization doesn't offer, big company like Target, I'll talk about owning your career. You know what? They're not going to come to you and be like, "Hey, Steve, you're underpaid." It's really on you to do that. And so now I was faced with a dilemma. I loved Target, great place to work. The discount was awesome, and I had just signed an offer letter for a different company. So I went down into the basement. We had a mail tube that went down somewhere in the basement. I found where it went. I found the mailman, and I explained to him I'd like his help committing a federal crime and retrieving something from the mail. And for some odd reason, he said, "Sure, why not?" And so I went into one of those cloth bins and found the letter I had signed and sent, and pulled it back, and ended up staying at Target. I was working with a recruiter, and the recruiter said, "Hey, counteroffers never work. You'll be gone within 6 months." And I sort of dismissed it. And within 6 months, I was gone. It changed. Everything changed the tone of working there, right? It's good to ask for what you're worth. It's good to communicate with management and let your preferences, let your, what's important to you be known. But once I had sort of shown the willingness to, move on for money, we were all just less interested in the relationship. Excuse me. And so I was gone within 6 months from that time. The tie-in here is that money isn't everything, and culture might be everything, right? Target was a great place to work. All of us, men and women in the departments that I worked in, similar ages, similar kinds of points in our career, maybe early in marriages, maybe not yet kids and things like that. We had a lot of fun during work. We had a lot of fun after work. And I never valued that enough. Looking back, I know that that's one of the things that I value, and that is really important to me. And so, after I left, again, realized that culture piece was so important. And I think everybody has to take that into account. That is really, what we learn over time is that it's the relationships, it's the esprit de corps, it's those kinds of things, in addition to providing for a family and reaching goals along those fronts. That's important, but it all works together, right? There's always been these interesting studies. I don't know what the number is these days, but it's sort of like the hierarchy of needs. And once you get to a certain income level, mean happiness doesn't continue to grow, right? They sort of just fall into a flat line, because once you're happy enough because basic needs are met and things like that, we're all about the same degree of happy no matter how much we make. And so important lessons with Target. What a great company. Every once in a while I sort of think about, hey, I wonder what's going on over there. Super progressive when it came to technology. Super interesting when it comes to retail. Still my favorite store. Again, I'm from Minnesota, so I have to say that. Really looking back, enjoyed my time there, and wish it would have ended a little bit differently. So then I moved on to a bank. And this was really, really an interesting experience. One of the things, and I think one of the tie-ins for everyone, is corporate strategy around technology. So if you're talking about staff IT, working in technology at places that aren't technology companies, boy, the approach to technology, cost center versus profit center, investment versus I hate every nickel I spend in this arena, that can really impact satisfaction, right? Definitely dig into that. If you're looking at opportunities for staff technology roles, simply because, the bank had a very different approach to what technology did for them, right? Where at Target, I had graduated from mainframes and 3270 emulators and token ring and all kinds of fun technologies that probably don't resonate with many of you. You back into a world of, boy, we haven't invested in this stuff. We are, using 5, 10, 15-year-old systems, kind of keeping it together. I had to relearn NetWare. There are all kinds of interesting things going on. Um, and I didn't suss enough of that out early. It was really sort of that rebound relationship, and made some compromises. Because it was time to move on from Target. Made some compromises and didn't really look into the company enough. I think that's the important sort of takeaway for all of us is, if you're displaced or just thinking about a change, you're interviewing the next company as much as they're interviewing you. We're going through some recruiting loops right now with candidates, and I'm seeing differing degrees of candidates like probing, asking good questions about our organization, about me as a leader, about the culture, about how do we think about competition, and that was really my takeaway from going to work for US Bank. Was I didn't ask enough of those questions. I didn't interview the bank. And so if you're in that position, regardless of sort of how much pressure you feel about making a change or catching on somewhere, it's really about you interviewing the company as well as them interviewing you. This didn't last long as well. I ended up making a relatively quick move from the bank as well. And real quick story about that. I think many of us dream about sort of that I quit moment. Slamming your fist on the table, like throwing paper in the air and walking out of the conference room. So I did that at the bank. We just eventually got to a point where there were some blowups and some challenges and things like that. It was both the most like cathartic thing I've ever done. It was also one of the most immature things I've ever done. And I came to realize that really quickly. So if you can learn by extension, while that sounds really fun, I can tell you that it's not the way to go. Right? I regretted it almost instantly. My manager at the time showed a lot of grace. Let me instead, more peacefully transition out of the organization. Slamming a pager down because I was back on call. That was another thing that didn't really suss out enough as I was taking the role. I was sort of back on call, which I hadn't been in a while. Slam the pager down and say I quit. It was fun for a second. I'm not gonna lie, but learn from my experience. That's not the way to exit. Your network is everything. Your reputation is everything, and it's best to always be thinking about how you're curating that. And so, my lesson as a takeaway is, I'm always managing my communication, my support, even as a leader, thinking about trying to use emotional intelligence to serve others. So when I left the bank, I went into consulting. And when I was in consulting, I think it was really my full embrace of sort of merit-based environments. Really learning to, hey, when you're billing hourly, there's some real easy reports to run about how you're doing. Are you maximized? Are you helping, salespeople find the next gig? I think that's kind of why I'm unique in the sense that I've got a bit of a sales brain back there somewhere, hiding behind my technical experiences, because in a small consulting firm like Rainier was, it was critically important that we helped sales find the next opportunity at an existing customer, grow our footprint with a customer. This is the late 90s, early 2000s. So there was tons of change going on, bringing Microsoft Exchange into environments for the first time and stuff like that. And so you really sort of learned that self-worth, really merit-based and owning your career that way, as well as having an eye towards business development, realizing that we're all sort of in that together. And, part of the embrace of merit-based environments is also that that chance that we all face, and that is really quite prevalent now, that it can be turned the other direction, and environments and organizations that have to cut go, well, where are we going to make those cuts? And I'd like to think that in many cases, maybe most cases, those are thoughtful kinds of things that are based off of whether it's merit, or whether it's strategic positioning or value to the business, that they actually tie into a strategy going forward. And if I'm willing to take commission, if I'm willing to take bonuses based off of how much we build. Early on in the days at Rainier, we did there was a computation. We were just growing out of it when I started, which was, the first 31 hours you bill in a week, that earns you your salary, and gets the company where it needs to be. But then everything over 31, there was basically a, here's some for you, here's some for us kind of thing. And so really just crazy mentality to bill, and to go out and deliver value to customers. And it was interesting to see that fall away a little bit. You can take sort of merit based and that cutthroat environment a little bit too far. But the flip side of that is, also realizing that I own my career, and that if the merit equation or the value equation stops working for my employer, that that might end up affecting me. We also went through a lot of corporate change. Rainier was bought by Compaq. Shortly after, Compaq was bought by HP. So I actually left this organization as an HP employee. And navigating that change for me was sort of a first go around, and that was tough. I don't think I was as adaptable and flexible as one needs to be. I'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second, especially when it comes to Microsoft, my time there, and sort of reading the strategies and being open to strategic change, right? Here, it was really based off of not just leadership, but corporate structure, corporate policy, the way things worked. The thing that caused me to leave this environment was really that merit-based thing sort of falling away with HP. In 2001, even after sort of the dot-com bubble popping, I had a great year, billed more than my peers and things like that. And Carly Fiorina, who was the CEO of HP at the time, decided, wage freezes and nobody gets a raise. I'm like, that's sort of counter to the culture I was used to working in, which is, well, no. If you were a top performer, you're a top performer when it came to recognition, and we'll make those hard calls. It just seemed like an easy call to say, sort of, no soup for anyone. Great experience. Loved getting into consulting, and some of those experiences will come back around. So sadly, these buildings at Microsoft are now gone. They've replaced buildings 1 through 8, those sort of diamond pointy buildings in the foreground, with some new construction finally, as those date back to the late 70s, early 80s. At Microsoft, it was really about emotional intelligence. It was my progression from individual contributor to manager to director to leader, and the knowledge that the one of the best skills I can bring to the table is that emotional intelligence, right? It's not what you say, it's what people hear, right? It's not what you offer, it's what people need. And doing that, I think, was super, super critical. And I think that translates now as well. At the end of the day, a lot of us love zeros and ones. We love, it either, the bit makes it there or not kinds of patterns. It's just, there's a comfort in sort of right and wrong, black and white. But this is about people, right? And so, this is the time to, make sure you're taking care of your network, make sure you are showing up as help for others. One of my peers, and frankly, someone I look up to a lot back from my days at Microsoft and still to this day, was probably the most successful person I worked with. Pace of career, probably compensation, stature, all those kinds of things. But his credo was helping others be successful. So even if you're in a position right now where justifiably it might be, all about you, right? Hey, I'm the one facing the challenge. I'm the one, looking for a new role or something like that. I really think that doing for others and showing up as help, I love that phrase, showing up as help, is really going to be one of those best strategies you can use to to navigate these times, right? Um, it will definitely come back to you, and it's been my experience that the people I've helped or have tried to help have been there for, it might not be this week, this month, this year, this decade, but those things pay off, right? We're all playing the long game, or we all should be playing the long game. And I regret a couple of things at Microsoft where I think I played the short game, right? Don't watch the stock price. Don't, prioritize for the short term or the one bad relationship with a manager or a leader. Prioritize for the big picture. And at the end, because of that, don't be afraid to leave. Even in these maybe tougher times than maybe we're used to. Take care of yourself. Don't be afraid to leave. I let the environment dictate my departure from Microsoft, and I regret that. I should have navigated that differently. And I think in being true to ourselves and being honest with ourselves is super, super critical, up to and including, making the tough decision to potentially leave an organization. So then I went back to HP and actually went back and worked for the practice manager, someone from Rainier way back in the day who is now a global vice president at HP to build a new business. The lesson takeaway here is really about your comfort zone. So tons of Microsoft experience, some Cisco experience in the consulting world. This was an open source job. This was OpenStack and Cloud Foundry and building a consulting team from scratch. And it was such a great experience along those vectors, right? Along those paths. I really enjoyed that community. I enjoyed that just completely different set of experiences, right? Contract negotiations were about, open source and licensing, licensing code in that format rather than negotiating EAs at Microsoft. So it was a different world. And I really, really appreciated that. The flip side of that, I'm being a little bit sensitive to time. We might go a couple minutes over. I hope that's okay. The challenge ended up being, so this is about a 3-year endeavor. About halfway through, I realized that second bullet, which is, again, culture trumps strategy, specifically in this case, but in a lot of cases. I was building a consulting organization, selling advanced services in a world where people sold storage and servers. And, my $500,000 contract might be impactful at the Stagecoach Bank. But when the book of business there is $50 million a year, and half of that is just racks upon racks of storage at the time, it was hard to run my business and drive my business, make it profitable in that world, simply because so many people around me they were oriented to a different North Star. They were paid differently. They had a different culture, a different speed. I couldn't rely on the sellers. I had to sort of build my own pre-sales selling motion within the team, and try and go out and shake the trees ourselves, or at least support those people in a real meaningful way, because the sales force they were oriented differently. They had different experiences and so forth. So look at culture, and make sure it's a fit. Make sure there's, not just executive commitment. We would talk all the time about HP Cloud and Helion and all these great things, and yay, rah, rah, here's $1 billion. But if the sales force and the ground troops at a large company like HP aren't behind you, it's going to be a tough road to hoe. And I really enjoyed 2 stints, working first as a practice manager and a consultant, and now as a global VP and a regional director. In my case, I appreciated that relationship, but you couldn't go home again, right? It wasn't the same. It wasn't, small company, make it up as we go along, consulting in the go-go 90s and early 2000s. This was very corporate HP, right? And I loved the outside the comfort zone things. I had some great experiences, and I really appreciated that piece of it. But over time, the culture won out. And HPE, the split off as well as HP, they're doing great things. And I think that ship is turning. I think I was a little early on trying to turn that ship. And so I think the key takeaway is look outside your comfort zone, right? I think a lot of people I know really have core capabilities and core competencies that translate much better than even you might think. Right? I was able to go from the Microsoft packaged software world, jump into open source consulting, building a team, doing something different, and really found that rewarding, found that very enjoyable and something don't regret at all, right? None of this stuff I regret. This is all, things that are adding on and get us to where we're going. So when I left HP, me and a couple of folks I had worked with over time founded a startup. And startups are awesome, and startups suck. Like it's hard. I guess again, just to hit the takeaway right away is don't discount it though. Don't discount the very small. I know, many of my peers, many of the people I'm connected to have amazing careers that are at some of the biggest and most influential, companies in the world. It isn't a departure from your value to go work someplace small, right? To be a big fish in a much, much smaller pond. Because, frankly, moving into that startup, I sort of looked at it as I've been in business school for 20 years, right? I saw how HP did things, how Microsoft did things, how Target and US Bank did things, took all the positives, all the negatives, and then we poured that into a new business. And so don't ever think that it's sort of too late. We didn't have a ping pong table, right? We were past that part of it, but we really brought a lot to the table when it came to crafting that business. Um, it's fun to be on both sides of every decision, right? The strategy, the execution. Hey, what is our expense policy? What is going to be our selling strategy? What is going to be our growth strategy? Who are we going to hire? And all of those things were wonderful, wonderful challenges, but it's very, very difficult. And the reason I think the key takeaway is that participating in that as an exercise is its own reward, right? So it goes back to, it's not only doesn't every startup hit, very few hit in sort of that go big financial outsized rewards kind of way. And if that happens, sure, that would be nice. But the value to me really comes in that rounding out your experiences, right? There are reason that it's important for kids to run a lemonade stand. This is the adult version of maybe getting those experiences I never got at HP. Right. I never sat down and said, what's our corporate budget for the year? What are we going to invest in? What are we not going to invest in? And it's just never too late to see if it's for you. So it kind of goes back to the outside the comfort zone comments, right? To say, hey, if you're at Salesforce, if you're at, Google Cloud, don't discount that little plucky startup that has an idea and wants to see where it can go and it's got 18 months to figure it out. I think everyone I know, pretty much everyone in my network, I mean, you're absolutely, capable of executing that. And then If it goes great, that's awesome. And if you need to look for something new in 2 years, I think most of us will be fine, right? I'm privileged to work with such great people and have such an amazing network. It was fun, right? It was fun. It was challenging. Um, uh, Glad I did it, right? In all of these instances, I'm glad I've done the things I've done, and I think maybe that's the number one takeaway is just be open to new experiences. Don't get a picture in your mind. Don't get committed to a picture. I think that happened to me at Microsoft, right? I got committed to one vision of the world, and then when the world started to drift away from that vision, I found it very, very hard to deal with. And so Fridays with Steve is sponsored by our friends at Apex Digital Solutions. And, that's where life has landed me now. And when I think about, being about a year in here at Apex, it fits a lot of those things that I think are important for you to be thinking about, right? Culture, growth mentality, the ability to impact strategy, the ability to influence through others. I think whether it's the marketing team, the sales team, anyone who works on our alliances, the things that I sort of think about on a day-to-day basis, I'm always asking them, well, what can I do to help? Right? How do I help you reach goals? Because I know if they all reach their goals, I'll be fine. And it took it wasn't an immediate thing when I exited our startup on great terms. I took my time and found the right fit. Had some other things that kind of came and went, and while it might make your family nervous, it made my wife nervous. Waiting for the right fit, I think, is one of the key takeaways. Hopefully you're in a position to be thoughtful about your moves, be thoughtful about your next steps, because I think that's critically important. I shared a couple instances in my career where I wasn't, and it was reflected in my tenure and my satisfaction with the role. Right, I was at U.S. Bank for 6 months or 8 months, thereabouts, and that reflected me not being very thoughtful about the move. I think what I'll end with, um, you know, uh, I'm gonna only have this up just so my email address is up there, is that kind of walking the walk, which is appear as help. And so, a lot of folks are posting that on LinkedIn. I've sort of, except for LinkedIn, I've sort of retracted from a lot of social media. I've retreated to writing thank you notes and calling people on the phone and so forth. It suits me a little bit better. And so just directly reach out if there's anything that I can do to help anyone listening to this. I'm a big believer in what I said, that I think showing up as help, for your coworkers, your peers, your network, your family, I think it pays off, right? And I think it comes back around. It comes back around to you in a super meaningful way. I think that'll be our last and sort of our key takeaway from this, which is, even if you're in a position where you're looking for that next opportunity, or thinking about making a change, continuing to help others, continuing to appear as help for your network, is really going to pay off, right? I've appreciated it from those that have done it for me, and feel like I always want to be on that end. So whether you're one of my employees, you're one of my friends, you're someone in my network, or you're meeting me for the very first time, I try and live by that, appear as help. So a little bit of a departure from what we normally do on Friday mornings. I thought it was pretty valuable. I wanted to sort of respond and reflect on what's going on in the world today, and do it as our marketing team termed, in a non-gross way. So hopefully I was non-gross. Hopefully you found some value. If nothing else, you've met someone else out in this world, and someone else you can lean on if need be. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.